Howdy gang. In today's episode of Pool School, I'm going to talk to you about something shocking. Pool shock, that is. So what do you say we get to it? Alrighty, before we go any further, I want to thank you again for watching this video and for subscribing to my channel. And I want to remind you to like and subscribe if you have not done so already, and share this channel with your friends, family, co-workers, schoolmates, whoever else you might think would benefit from it. Okay, so today we are talking about pool shock, shocking your pool, okay? So I'm gonna break this down into a few parts. First, I'm gonna talk to you about why you might shock your pool. Then we're gonna talk about the different types of shock. There's only 3. And I'm gonna offer you an alternative to shock and let you know why I particularly don't use shock except for 2 specific reasons. And then it's only 1 type of shock that I use. And then I'm also gonna show you a hack at the end in case you need to shock your pool and you have none, all right? So, first and foremost, why you might need to shock your pool. Without a doubt, the number 1 reason that people are going to shock their pool is because for whatever reason, they need to get their chlorine levels up as quickly as possible. Now remember that, okay, for later in this video when I talk about an alternative. So it could be lots of reasons or for that need. Maybe you've had a big pool party or you had a lot of use in your pool and it's created a lot of demand on the chlorine, and your chlorine levels have tanked, and so you need to get your chlorine levels up quickly. Another reason to get your chlorine levels up quickly is maybe you were out of town or for some reason you forgot to service your pool and check the chemistry and add chlorine, etc. And you've gotten behind the 8 ball and you got to get that chemistry up quick, especially the chlorine. So shock can be a really benefit to that as well. So whatever the reason is, usually it is to get your chlorine levels up as quickly as possible, okay? So there are a couple other reasons and we'll go into them in a little bit, and it'll also explain why I use a particular shock for certain reasons, only 2 reasons, okay? All right, so now let's talk about the different kinds of shock. Now remember, there's only 3 kinds, or basically there's only 3 kinds that are on the market that most people use, so it's pretty easy to remember. So we'll go over those now. Alrighty, so these are the 3 most common forms of shock for pools, and I'm going to show them to you in order of least preferenced to most preferenced. And remember, just remember what I said, that I don't use shock in order to get chlorine levels up in pools. I have another option that I will explain to you later, okay? The first one, and don't worry about the brand names because it really doesn't matter, all 3 of these are available in pre-packaged form, which makes it very easy and convenient, or they can come in like tubs like this. This one's like a 10-pound tub. You can get them in 25-pound, and you can look online and find those different variations, okay? So the first one, so remember this, all 3 of these are mineral based, okay? What that means is there is a mineral used to bind the product together so it holds it in granule form, okay? The first one, and my least favorite, is called calcium hypochlorite. Can you see that? Or Cal Hypo for short, okay? It's probably my least favorite. Some of you may like it. I don't particularly care for it. The second one, and go back to this. This is a calcium-based chlorine. Okay, so the calcium is the mineral that's used to bind the chlorine together so it holds it in solid form. All right. All right. These 2 are sodium-based. The first one is called disodium chloride, or disodium. It says sodium dichloride. It's like, really, just think of it this way, dichlor, okay? Disodium chloride, okay? So disodium chloride, and it's sodium based, all right, which is a mineral. The third one, which if I were to use it for the 2 reasons that I use shock for, and I'll explain that in a moment, this is the one that I would use. This is trichlor, or I don't know what it says, triazine, trione, whatever. I kind of call it, notice it's calcium free. So I find that this is the most potent of the 3. But one of the cool things about these is they're very convenient. So that's one of the big pros, but I'll get to that in a moment, okay? To use them, it's really simple, all right? You just tear open a bag of whichever one you choose, right? And you run your equipment, because anytime you add chemicals, unless for specific reasons that I've stated in some of my other videos, unless you're doing one of those. To distribute the chemistry fast, you want to have your system running, okay? You walk around the perimeter of your pool and distribute that into your pool and wait about an hour or two, test your pool water, and that's pretty much it. If your chlorine levels are back up to where you need them to be, you're in business, no need to add any more. If they're not, you just repeat the process with a little more shock, okay? So, really quickly, I want to go over the pros and cons of using this kind of shock, all right? And again, like I said, I'm referring to any one of these three, and whether they're in prepackaged form or in tub form, okay? So, as I said earlier, they're very convenient. Your hands very rarely touch the product. You tear the thing open, you distribute it into your pool, and they also, so that's the first reason, they're very convenient and the ease of use is really, really good, okay? So the other reason that they might be a good choice is because they do, in fact, elevate your chlorine levels up faster than, say, dissolving a tablet, okay? Because tablets take a long time to dissolve. That's part of their plus, is that they take a while to dissolve, so you can put them in on a weekly basis, okay? So those are the pros to any of these products. The big con, or the two negatives on these products, is this. Number one, and this is probably the biggest one, they are going to add minerals to your water. Now that's usually not a huge problem, especially if you're not doing this too often. This is not something you want to do all the time, right? This is just those occasions where you need to get your chlorine levels up for whatever reason, okay? So they are going to add minerals to your pool. Now in Arizona, we have extremely hard water, and that means there's a lot of minerals in that water. So by adding shock like this to a pool, even occasionally, you're increasing the level of minerals in a pool, and that can lead to scaling, or a hard water line, or hard water scale around your water line. Or it can also contribute to the frequency or the growth of mineral deposits or stalagmites on the bottom of your pool. And I'm going to pause this and run behind to one of my houses and show you an example of it. But remember, this particular house, it's not because of these products. It's because we have very hard water, and hard water in Arizona tends to like to grow mineral deposits on plaster pools. So let me show you that really quick. Okay, so this is an example of the mineral deposits that can form on the bottom of a pool. So if you look closely at this video, if you look closely right there in the middle, in the center, that little smudge that looks like dirt, that's actually a mineral deposit. And you'll notice there's quite a few all around the bottom of the pool. And obviously this pool's a little dirty, I haven't brushed it out yet, but you can see those mineral deposits. Now those things can get sharp, and they can cut little feet and hands, and so the only way to really get rid of them is to get in there with some wet sandpaper and sand it down. Doesn't really harm the surface of the pool, it's just minerals, and then you just sand it so it's flush with the surface. Now note that this was not caused by the minerals in shock. This is actually just an example because we have such hard water in Arizona that we tend to get these type of mineral deposits, especially on plaster pools. This particular manufacturer of this plaster, and I won't name names, but they apparently have had some problems with the surface being a great breeding ground for minerals. But that again is an example of minerals deposits that happen in a pool due to super hard water. So it's one of the reasons why I don't like using the granular shocks, because you're just adding more minerals to the water that's already hard, and it can increase the possibility or likelihood of mineral deposits like this growing on your pool surface. One more con to using the granular shock. If you have a vinyl liner of your pool, like an above ground pool, or you have a fiberglass pool, or maybe even a pool that has a painted surface like a black bottom pool or something like that, if the granules sit on any of those surfaces, because they're corrosive, they can cause some damage to that surface, especially vinyl lined pools like above ground pools, or a painted surface like a black bottom pool, because it can actually bleach that paint where it lands. So that's another reason why I'm not a fan of using the granular style shocks. So those are the two big cons to using any type of granulated pool shock, okay? Remember, I said there's two reasons that I use one of them, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But I want to tell you about the one that I use, or what I use instead of shock. Now remember what I said earlier. The reason you shock your pool usually is to increase the chlorine levels of your pool as rapidly as possible. I personally know no quicker way to do that than to use this product. This is liquid chlorine. And you notice it comes in a 2-gallon pack, 1-gallon jugs inside each. I find it very effective, and aside from chlorine gas, which I never recommend using unless you're a professional and you know what you're doing, I don't use it. I don't even know if you can use it on a typical civilian pool. But liquid chlorine is about the purest form of chlorine that you can get for your pool. It's already pre-diluted. It's not mineral based. So when you pour it into your pool, it disperses into your pool very rapidly. Nothing goes into your pool and gets into your system as quick as the liquid chlorine. So rather than using any of these to raise your chlorine levels and risk increasing your minerals and the hardening of your water, I tend to use liquid chlorine. Using the liquid chlorine works about the same. 1 gallon is about the equivalent to a pound of shock, give or take. That's what I found. And if you're running your equipment and you distribute it the same way you would the packet of the shock, you only have to wait about half an hour to 45 minutes to test your water, because it gets into your system that fast and it disperses around your pool that quickly because it's in liquid form. And again, you can get this stuff, you can get it at Walmart, I've seen it at Target, Costco, pool supply store, but that's my go-to instead of using any of these shocks. Now, I did say that there's one of the shocks that I'll use for two specific purposes, none of which have to do with elevating your chlorine levels. And the one that I use when I need to do one of two things is the trichlor shock, okay? Now, I don't use it in this form. I use it in this form. This is the granular Algae out, and you've seen this in my other videos. And the only reason I will use the trichlor shock is to kill visible green or yellow / mustard algae in a pool while I'm treating it for algae, okay? And if you've not seen my video on how I cleared my green pool, I've put a link to it in the description below this video, so you can watch it, and it'll explain how I use the algae out in conjunction with phosphate remover to clean up my green pool, okay? But I use it to kill the visible algae. The other reason I'll use it is to kill visible black algae, which tends to grow on the surface of your pool, okay? It grows underwater. And again, if you want to know more about that, I encourage you to watch my video on black algae and how to get rid of it. I've put a link to that video in the description of this video as well. So watch either one of those, and you might want to check out my video as well on algae and algicides and why you don't need them. I've put a link to that one below as well, okay? So I will use the trichlor granules for those two purposes alone. And if you want to know how I use them, you can watch those videos, okay? Alrighty, so I've talked to you about shock and why people use it. Talked about the three main kinds, remember? Cal hypo, dichlor, or trichlor. I've talked about an alternative and what I like to use, which again is the liquid chlorine, all right? Because like I said, I've done explain to you why. And I've also talked to you about why I will use trichlor granules for treating visible green or yellow algae or killing visible black algae, okay? But in order to stop it from returning, you want to watch my video on algae and algicides and why you don't need them, okay? Now, I did promise you a hack. So let's say you live in an area that it's off the beaten path. I have a buddy who lives way out in the middle of nowhere, and he has a pool. And he uses chlorine tablets, but sometimes he can't get in town, so he can't get to shock, all right? He can't get a shock, he can't get liquid chlorine, so he can't really do anything, but he does have tablets, all right? This is a hack that will help you when it comes to taking care of getting your chlorine levels up in your pool quickly if you don't have shock or liquid chlorine, all right? What you're gonna do is basically take a tablet, a chlorine tablet, right? We have the 3-inch stabilized chlorine tablets. I would probably suggest wearing gloves you're going to open your skimmer cover. Make sure your skimmer basket is empty, but make sure your skimmer basket is in place, right? You want to make sure your skimmer basket is in place. You're going to turn your system on so that the water is circulating and being pulled through the skimmer. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take that tablet, however you want to, and crush it. Okay? Some people crush it in a bag, some people just slam it on the inside of the skimmer, on the concrete in there, and it crumbles, and all those crumbled pieces fall into the skimmer basket. And that allows the chlorine to erode faster because it's in smaller particles and get into your pool quicker. It still takes a little bit longer for that to happen, but it's still faster than waiting for a tablet to dissolve. Now, I don't recommend doing that on a regular basis, but if you're in a jam and you need to get your chlorine levels up, you can do that once in a while. I do not recommend putting just regular tablets in your skimmer instead of using a floating tablet holder or an erosion style thing like a deck chlor. It's just going to be a little too hard on your system. You're going to wear out your basket pretty quick that way as well. Okay, so that is my hack on using a tablet to shock your pool if you can't get shock or liquid chlorine. So gang, that's my video on pool shock and why I don't use it and why I would use one particular kind, yes, the trichlor granules, okay? And I also showed you that hack. I hope it made sense. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to post them in the comment section below this video, or you can email me as always, and my email address will show up on the bottom of the screen here. It's kennypoolschool@gmail.com. Once again, kennypoolschool@gmail.com. Just a quick note, remember, I am speaking based on my experience with the different types of shock. Some of you, especially those of you who have pool service companies, you might have experienced other things, and that's great. So I'm just sharing what has worked for me and what I've experienced, and I hope that it's been helpful for you all right? So again, thanks for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share this channel, and I will see you next time. So until we meet again, remember, be safe, have fun, and always, 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 please watch those kids around water. I'll see you next time.